number 2 is discussion relating to positions of mayor, chair, and vice mayor, vice chair. As we recall, because it happened so recently, in May, we were supposed to elect new mayor and vice chair. The thought at the time from at least some of the council, and as we voted, the whole council, was that we would continue with the continuity of the current leadership while we were going through COVID, essentially because there was some contacts that I had made and was kind of dealing with, and it was thought that it was a good idea that I would continue until COVID kind of calmed down a little bit. And I'm very happy to say, although COVID was definitely a scary thing, and we had a loss of a life here in Owasso, I also think we, compared to other communities, were very fortunate with regards to COVID. And frankly, I no longer see any need that I need to stay on board as mayor at this point. We normally transition every 2 years. We've always rotated the mayor and vice mayor position. Well, not always. As of several years ago, we decided to rotate every couple of years, as long as the council members were in good standing. Next up, our Vice Mayor Bush would become mayor, and Councilor Kelly Lewis would become vice mayor. So it will be my recommendation at next Tuesday's meeting, I will resign as mayor and nominate Vice Mayor Bush as mayor, and then Councilor Lewis as vice mayor. That would be my recommendation, that we make those nominations. Anybody have any questions or comments on that?
My only question would be, as far as the agenda item, Julie, is this something where we just put in for election of mayor and vice mayor?
Yes, Counselor, I think that's all it needs to say, is that there will be, just like we usually do, an election held for mayor and then for vice mayor.
So it's not really an issue of you having to resign as much as we just put something on the agenda for election and go with it like we would have in May, or did in May.
We could do that to make it make sense. Mayor Kelly might want to make a preface statement of why, again, on the record, and state that he is stepping down, and then make the nomination.
And would I need to do the same as vice mayor, stepping down as vice mayor?
That's probably true. Whatever Mayor Kelly does, it would be good to follow suit on the vice mayor.
Okay. And just for, I often don't think a lot of people understand this. I think probably the folks that are tuned in do understand this, but the mayor and vice mayor are just elected from within the council. So when I no longer am mayor, I will still stay on as a councilor and finish out my term. So that seems to be often a point of confusion with some folks, the way our council works. So, any other discussion on that item? All right, good. Thank you, everybody. Item number 3 is discussion relating to the proposed fiscal year 2020-2021 annual operating budget. Looks like Warren and Linda are going to tag team this item.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight's discussion would really revolve around any questions that you might have, questions, recommendations, thoughts about the budget that you've had a chance to look at for the last several weeks. We had the hearing on June 2nd. You were given a presentation of the budget in May, the public hearing, and of course, or as it turned out, there were no citizen comments, nor we received any online or otherwise, but now would be your opportunity to ask myself, Finance Director Linda Jones, Assistant City Manager Chris Garrett, who was instrumental in putting the budget together, or any of the department directors if you have a particular question about a department budget. So I will turn it back to you for that purpose.
I have a few questions. First of all, just say up front, I think we've all felt this way the last few years. The budget presentation is continually improving and makes it easier from a council standpoint to be able to wade through it, so to speak, and be able to see what direction the city wants to go. So let's preface all that. I just had a couple of small questions, and I don't expect, by the way, answers tonight if it becomes becomes that, because it's one of those things, you go through it little by little. I don't have a whole lot of time to do it all at once, so do it little by little and come up with little questions. And so we talk about, let's just start at page 30, where we had the budget summary by function. For culture and recreation, it shows an increase of a little over $1 million, or $1.1 million. I went back to the culture and rec areas of the budget, and I couldn't really see where the increase was coming from. So I was going to ask if maybe at some point I get some sort of information on where that's coming from. There's a little bit of increase. You go back into that area, but it doesn't add up to $1.1 million, and that's kind of where my question comes from. But so that, and I had, correct me if I'm wrong, it seemed like that you had mentioned in the presentation that there would be no salary increases this year. Is that correct, based on what we're at right now?
Correct. Some of the type of things you see on a summary page like that, and I'll ask Ms. Jones to maybe explain that a little bit further, but some of the things you see are carryovers, and one year there's a project and the next year there's not. So there's other considerations there, but I think Ms. Jones has the answer.
So associated with the sports park, we think that most of that increase in capital improvements. Okay, and a carryover from this year's project. Okay, that makes sense. That helps. That helps. But going back to the other question, salaries. You go by each department and you see the personal services, and that's well defined in the back, by the way, what personal services is, but you see increases in just about every department. So I guess I'm questioning where would those increases come from if we're not giving increases?
She turned my mic on. I apologize to the audience.
Oh.
What you're seeing in many cases is the reflection of a full year's salary increase. Quite often we give raises on anniversary date, and so you can have a half a year's increase reflected in this year's budget, but then next year we would need to build in the full year of the increase. So we didn't change the pay scale, it's just we have a full year's impact instead of just a partial year in many cases.
Show that increase the following year. Mm-hmm. Makes sense. I guess my only last question is, I want to be optimistic. I want to think that things are going to rebound based on the COVID situation that we've been under the last few months. And I know that you all have taken a pretty physically conservative approach to this budget. So what if it gets worse? Has there already been discussion or plans to be made that would, and how we'll handle it if we don't achieve our revenue for this year?
I could answer that by saying that with our source of funding being sales tax, we are constantly in that mode of analysis. Fortunately, the last few years, we've had a continually increasing. We've had sales tax revenue increases, but we're more or less always in that mode of if things turn south, we'll have to evaluate on a month-to-month basis. You don't want to act quickly in those situations, but if things were to really turn south and we find that we didn't meet our budget projections, even though we've lowered them significantly, we would try to balance out what we could do with fund balance. Obviously, we've got some additional cushion going into this end of year that will add to the fund balance, but we'd be looking at how long does it look like this is going to last? Will fund balance shore us up for now, or if things were to get very, very serious, we would start looking at furloughs, and then eventually looking at the overall budget, you know, what things could we cut. But we're really, because of sales tax being our major source of funding, we're kind of always in that mode. But to your point, it's a lot more volatile because there's more unknowns right now. But I would assure you that we're constantly in that mode of looking, what will we do if the numbers don't come in?
Okay, that's all I needed. Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, it helps that that fund balance is so high too. I mean, we're really about as good a position we've been in a long time. I'm with you. I'm fairly optimistic with what we've seen, you know, in the recent weeks. So I'm hoping the projections are too conservative, which is kind of where you want to be going. But I share the same concern.
That's the one thing you guys have always done. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
You've always been on the side of being very conservative and not being, and always watching it, month to month. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Warren. Move on to item number 4, discussion relating to community development items. Mr. Dempster. And Mr. Fritchen.
Okay, I think I have a couple slides here that I can begin with. The first case that I can bring forth this evening is annexation with a rezoning associated with it. Specifically, it's regarding lots 7 and 8, block 4 of the Graceland Acres subdivision. This particular subdivision was developed in Tulsa County many years ago, I think going back to the late 50s. There's like a panhandle shape, which you'll see here in this next slide. It included, the Graceland Acres actually is over here, but it also included this panhandle piece that came out all the way over to 129th and 76th Street North. And for many years, at least since I've been here, people have tried to acquire these parcels and get people to sell to them for development for commercial uses in here. The land use plan, which you'll see in a moment, does call this area out for commercial uses. But all that being said, the applicant successfully, let me back up a little bit. In Graceland Acres, there is a restrictive covenant in their private covenants that all of the lots be restricted to residential uses. So to change that, per Oklahoma statute, you have to get 66% approval of everybody in that subdivision. And that's done by the applicant. He does that privately. The city doesn't get involved. In this case, it was the county. Well, it was in the county. Long story short, he did get those signatures done, and that was recorded in Tulsa County. It's a document that does get recorded. It changes those covenants to release those particular 2 lots from that restriction. So that essentially allows him to do now is develop that as commercial and annex those lots into the city limits, which that's his petition right now, is annexation with the associated rezoning. Now, to kind of tag on the end of that, he did, during the course of that process, offer compensation to those individuals for their time it took to fill out the paperwork and then to secure a notary to notarize those signatures. So just wanted to disclose that. That was also made aware to the Planning Commission last night as well. Use master plan for that area. As you can see, those first 4 lots were denoted on the plan for commercial uses. And looking back at historic land use plans, it's been shown for some type of commercial use on that corner of various shapes since 1978. So we had a plan that was done back in 78, and it did show that hard corner for commercial uses. The lots to the east are shown as transitional uses as you move closer into the rest of the Graceland Acres neighborhood. So that case went to the Planning Commission last night, and it did receive a 3-0 vote or recommendation for approval of both the annexation and the zoning change to commercial. I will say that Commissioner Miller did recuse himself from the vote because has stated that he had a personal relationship with the developer. So with that, I would be happy to take any questions on this case. Thank you.
Have we had a situation like that before? Where a landowner had to petition the rest of the neighborhood to?
Not since I've been here. Again, this was done in the county, but it doesn't happen very often. But in this case, to get those lots released, there is a procedure that has to be followed according to statute. And it took him a while to do it, but he finally did achieve that. And subsequently, that did get recorded in Tulsa County. And I think the document is included in your packet with all the signatures.
I more was just looking for confirmation that I'd never heard of that before.
It's difficult to do. And he was able to get it done.
What percentage, not that it matters, because I have obviously more than 60, but what percentage of the owners in that Breaks and Acres agreed with it? Did he have anyone push back?
Well, I think there were some people that had concerns about it. We did hear from a couple of property owners, two that lived in Copper Meadows, and then one property owner immediately to the east of this subject property. He had concerns over the designation on the land use plan as commercial. Felt like it would devalue his properties. He had concerns about noise, somewhat about traffic. He adamantly did not want to sign the petition, and so he did not. The people in Copper Meadows, similar concerns, noise, privacy issues, buffering and all that sort of stuff, and traffic. And I think we had, was it probably 4 or 5 people spoke? 3? Okay. Thank you.
As far as the rezoning part, obviously we're talking about annexation and rezoning at the same time. Is that right? A lot of times we'll see the rezoning be ag, and then whenever they come up with the plan, then they may rezone to some other commercial, whatever. What makes this just straight commercial? Because he already knows what he's going to do with the property?
Yeah, essentially that, and he determined that he's probably not going to need a PUD to do what he's intending to do on this property. He's actually the same developer that developed this little small commercial center across the street here. Steve Bornia is his name. I believe he grew up here, lives in Las Vegas now. But really nice guy and very easy to talk with. But back to your question, if the land use plan agrees with the zoning that they want, then we can carry that through at the same time as annexation, so long as we advertise it that way in the paper, which was done.
Your intent is, okay. Makes sense. Thanks.
Anyone else on that item? Okay, we can move on to item B.
This next item is a PUD, Plan Unit Development, and there's an associated rezoning with it as well. It's called the Owasso Assisted Living Center. It's located a little bit to the west of the intersection of 129th East Avenue and East 116th Street North. If you know where the location of the Prairie Village Assisted Living Center is, that's located here in this corner, northwest corner. We've got the Ace Hardware on the southwest corner. The southeast corner is the Walmart neighborhood market. And there's a new bank credit union that's located on this hard corner right here. So it's not too far away from this commercial node. They are proposing in this PUD that the back half of it be developed within a assisted living facility, and then the south half eventually would be developed with commercial uses. However, in the interim, they want to retain the small home that exists right here as the office for the facility, as well as the residence for the caretaker that would basically manage this facility. We've met with them on several occasions. They've looked at this property for probably at least a year. I guess they finally got everything together and were able to assemble a package that worked well for them. But this map here does show the surrounding zoning. It is presently zoned AG agriculture. Surrounding it is zoned AGR agricultural residential, pretty much all the way around the existing property. Land use master plan calls the entire tract out for commercial. So the back half being a transitional type use that they're proposing, which is assisted living, would be in keeping with the plan as it is less intense than the proposed preferred highest intensity of this location. So as long as you're de-intensifying it, it fits in with what the land use plan is prescribing for this area. All right. This is the concept plan that has been provided by the applicant, and it shows the bottom area that is called out as the CS zoned area. The top half would be zone RM, residential multifamily, and that would contain the facility, the assisted living facility. It's got two parking lots being proposed, one on the north, one on the south, with a driveway that would come in and serve the facility off of 126 East Avenue. There'd be 2 points of access along this street. One would be located here, the other one would be located up here. There's also another point of access that would come in off of 116th Street. Planning Commission recommended only one be allowed, so the PUD document is restricting this development to one point of access on 116th Street North. And it would be located presently where the driveway is that serves this existing house. Now, as they commence with their engineering drawings and design this out, which they're beginning the process of now, that may slide a little bit to the east or west, and then when the property is platted, that limits of access will be shown that will correspond to where they want that driveway. And they're also referencing in the PUD document, see with the blue arrows here, that cross access would be allowed between the lot to the west if it should ever develop at a similar intensity, say a commercial type use. We try to encourage these in all the arterial streets to get the cross access so that there's not multiple curb cuts up and down your arterials. We also ask that they provide some kind of cross access with an eventual mutual access located here so that the commercial lot could also utilize this entrance to basically get in the backside of the commercial lot as well. Again, reducing curb cuts along the arterial street. The Planning Commission did hear this item last night, and they did recommend 4-0 to approve the PUD with the subsequent rezoning. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Can we restrict, I know you were gonna do go back to that, the last slide. Can we restrict the, front lot from, I know we're gonna try to get access to the, property in the front, but can we do some type of restriction where there's no way they could use the driveway and go around for any reason so that you wouldn't have any traffic from the back coming out, in the front there?
So if I'm following you, traffic from here coming through?
Right, so that, right now you've got it on 126.
Right.
And so can there be some type of restriction to keep it on 126 and not come out in front of where the house is now, as far as any flow coming from the back?
You're not wanting a curb cut on 129, is that what you mean for that from?
On 126? No, on 116.
116,
You're
right.
saying that you're gonna give them access to the blue arrow up on the top.
Well, that would be mutual access agreements between the two lots. Should this lot ever split into two pieces, that was the restriction that the Planning Commission really wanted between these two lots, is that there would be cross access allowed. So I think we would want to encourage movement through here rather than focusing so much on 126th East Avenue, because presently these are single-family homes at this time.
Is 100?
And there also may be some fire access restrictions. Again, we're so early in the process, they haven't provided any design plans whatsoever at this point, other than this concept sketch.
So they would be able to go from the back through this front lot and come out where the driveway.
On 116th, yeah.
Not on 116. Yes, hitting 116.
Here?
So they would be able to go from there and go all the way back to the back.
Technically, yes.
And how far is it from the driveway to that intersection?
From here to here?
Yes.
I didn't measure it out, but it's well over 150 feet, which is our minimum allowable. And I believe also, as 116th Street's improved, there's going to be a median here. So essentially, it's going to function as a right-in, right-out. That the cut
Yeah, right in, right
will
out.
occur
Yeah.
here.
Is there a plan for any light at 126?
I don't know if Roger, I don't believe there is.
And is 126 a through street? Does it go all the way to 126th Street?
No, it goes to 120. 120.
Right.
Yeah, it goes about 3 blocks. And then, yeah, that makes sense. Right in, right out. That would be fine.
Right. So we've had, like I said, a lot of people have called about this area. There's a realtor that represents a lot of these people in this particular neighborhood to the north, to the east. They sometimes can't get all on the same page of what they really want to do. But we didn't have anybody that showed up to comment on this particular item. However, the applicant was asked to provide notice to the immediate neighbors and provide this concept plan to them. And they had some general questions that came up about more of design-related questions about the facility. But those, they really couldn't answer at this point in time because they haven't actually got the final design worked out at this point.
You probably said this, but I had to ask, make sure I'm right with you. As far as the PUD goes, it will delineate that front section as being commercial or?
Yes.
Okay.
And they are self-restricting that, so they, if you have a copy of the PUD document, there's a paragraph in there that restricts out certain uses within that commercial piece of property there.
Okay, that's good.
Anybody else? Okay. Item C.
Item C deals with an easement closure that is located on the Rejoice Christian campus. Specifically, this easement is located where they're building a new field house. It'll be basically an indoor half a football field where they can practice football in inclement weather. But this easement, they determined that they do not need it and they need to remove it the proper way. So the way to do that is you officially close this easement. And that's why they're bringing this forth, is to close this particular easement that would be in the field house here. You can kind of see the outline of the field house here, and the easement runs at this location here. The proposed new location, they're going to relocate it down here to the south of this entry drive that comes into the campus facility. And that's essentially it with this case. Pretty simple easement closure request. And if there's any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer those.
So why was the easement there in the first place? Was that part of the original design? Or?
It was part of the original plat, and I believe, I'm not sure, is there a water line in it? I don't believe there is. It's Washington County rules water line, but I don't believe it's in it. So they're moving the easement to that new location, and that's where the water line will be installed in that location.
Okay.
And the reason it's being brought forth to the council is because the council approved the original plat with all the easements, and therefore to properly remove it, it needs to come back to correctly close the easement.
Makes sense.
Any other comments? All right, thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Item number 5 is discussion relating to city authority manager items. Mr. Lear.
Thank you, Mayor. And the first item you can see is various citizen board and committee appointments. And I'm going to ask our city clerk, Julie Stevens, to walk through those vacancies and answer any questions that you might have concerning talent bank applications or other possible candidates.
Good afternoon. Mr. Lear. The memo in your agenda packet is just a list of all of the various appointments for boards and committees that are going to expire as of June 30th. We can go over them individually if you like, or if we want to get right into discussion, we certainly can. Mr. Lear is passing around the talent bank applications that we have on file. I do want to point out, though, before any discussion takes place, we do have specific vacancies. The audit committee has the banker seat vacant. Todd Ward was serving in that term and has since left employment with RCB, so that has created a vacancy. We do not have anyone in the talent bank currently that would fit that position, so we are going to have to, we'll do some social media posts and some of our website posts, and then ask if anybody has anyone who may be interested to encourage them to fill out a talent bank application. And then we also have a vacancy in our capital improvements committee. Sean Reese has served on that committee for many years and has submitted a resignation. And so we need to get that filled. It is just a citizen at large position, and there are several people in the talent bank currently that would fill that position. And then the third vacancy that we have is a planning commission member. David Horton is resigning effective basically June 30th. So I think he'll probably maybe serve one more meeting possibly, and then he is asked to be taken off that committee. Slightly different though with Mr. Horton's the position that he was filling, that term doesn't actually expire until June 30th, 2021. So any appointment to that is going to expire next year, and we'll have to reappoint or make an appointment. And those are the vacancies. The rest of the people who are listed here and their terms are going to expire have all indicated an interest to continue serving in those positions. Again, the audit committee does have a city council representative, and that needs to be discussed. There is a typo on your memo, however. If you remember, the city council seat is the city councilor who is serving the second year of their 3-year term, and it lists Councilors Kelly and Councilor Bush, and it should say Councilor Bumbright. So my apologies, but that should be Councilor Bumbright, being in that second year of the 3-year term. And with that, the item is on the agenda for discussion, and I'll leave that discussion with the council unless you have questions.
Are you paying close attention, Vice Mayor Bush? This will be your job next week. I have had discussions, Ian was planning on tabbing Keith Whitfield for capital improvements. I've had personal discussions with him, and that was going to be my recommendation. And then as far as planning commission, I know Nick Keeler very well. That is not to detract from anybody else. I don't know anybody else on the list that's up for planning commission, so I would make a recommendation for Nick Keeler. He's a fine young man, doing a great job at that.
Yeah, and I've known Keith for a long time, so I think you do a good job as far as that. That would be my recommendation also. So.
He's a visionary for sure.
Just be prepared if we bring Keith in, we're going to have a new capital improvements logo.
That's right. But he may even design, he also does cornhole games, so he may make a capital improvements cornhole build. So.
Any possible bankers we can recruit? There's several I can ask.
So if I understand what you're saying, that Doug needs to, that she no longer serve on the audit committee, it has to be somebody.
Yes. It's a one-year term.
So it needs to be Doug that would jump on board.
Yes, the way it's written is it is a city council member who is in, yeah, the second year term. I'm,
Oh, okay.
His term runs by itself. I'm the only one in the second year, so.
Okay.
I think though, and Julie, correct me please if I'm wrong, if a counselor who is in their second year of the term can't serve on the audit committee, I think you can select amongst the remaining members. I don't know, to be honest, I don't know that we've had that happen, but I'd have to go back and just look at it. Julie may have thought.
What's that? Oh, yeah, sure. Served a few times on that. It's a good committee.
All right.
So
Any
if you-
other comments on that?
If you'd like to move forward with those recommendations, we can put this on next week's agenda. We don't have to, though, if some discussions need to be held or
I would prefer, since we are most likely changing over mayorship next week, to leave that with Mayor to be Bush.
I'm fine with it.
The sooner the better.
Yeah, yeah, I think that, because that's supposed to be out there a little bit anyway, so.
That's the hardest thing, is filling those positions. It seems to drag on, so if you
Yeah.
got somebody in place, get them in there.
Yeah.
So I
okay, sounds good. And then we can hold the audit committee until we find a recommended replacement. We can add that to the agenda anytime.
We'll make some calls. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Julie. The next item, we will ask Ms. Linda Jones, our finance director, for our monthly sales tax report.
That you're on the budget and I'm smiling and saying we had a great fun.
still, it's gonna be good.
But we in fact did have a good month on our sales tax in that it was a month that was fully impacted by the coronavirus with our businesses that were shut down during that time. And in spite of that, we were only 66,000 below budget for the monthly sales tax. But on the other side, use tax exceeded budget by more than that. So we had a great month, and that is tremendous news. Now I can't say, and we didn't plan on it looking this good every month because we don't know what's going to happen with the coronavirus, and we built next year's budget with it substantially down, thinking that there could be an impact. We don't know when. We didn't know if we'd have consecutive months impacted or if it might come and go as cases happen. So I feel very comfortable with the budget that we have recommended, that it's extremely conservative. We don't know what's going to happen, but this is excellent news that we are so close to budget, and in fact ended almost 1.4 million above budget for the year when you combine your sales and use tax. So we look great ending this year, and if not for the virus, we would have looked even better. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Great news. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Just several other items, dates and notable events. Want to mention that we have with us this evening in her third week of employment our new city planner, Alexa Beamer. If you haven't met Alexa, be sure and meet her immediately following the meeting. Already I've heard great things. I do know that she's a University of Oklahoma graduate, so that holds her in high stead.
That's always good.
Moving on, more of a heads up for the very near future. I think most of you are aware that there's a significant amount of CARES Act funding in the amount of about $1.23 billion that went to the state of Oklahoma for disbursement, not only for the state, but for Oklahoma cities and towns, and then $140 million to Tulsa County. What that has placed the city of Owasso in and our finance department is the slight predicament of working through the various qualifications to get reimbursement for expenses related to COVID-19 with two different sets of rules and two different sets of disbursement processes. And that is ever changing. I found out just late last week that new guidelines from the Department of Treasury could allow for as much as 45% of the state's funding to be reimbursed to Oklahoma cities and towns based on a formula relating to population. But everything is a little bit up in the air. Early on, everyone asked the question, will this money be eligible for revenue loss considerations? On the heels of a very good sales tax report, maybe we'd lobby for no eligibility for revenue loss, just split up the money. But right now we're under the guidelines of just qualified reimbursable expenses. And these are expenses that could not have been budgeted, but were expenses that we incurred as a result of COVID-19. There was an initial amount of $39,000. I think we've submitted applications for another 30-some thousand. The Board of County Commissioners of Tulsa County met last week, approved some of those. So we'll be in the situation where we will be in need of approving some budget amendments for whatever amounts that might come our way. In light of what was mentioned about conservative budget projections, we did not budget for any reimbursements. So certainly that's another very conservative measure, being that it was unknown. We didn't anticipate anything. So anything that we do get that is due to us from the CARES Act passed by the federal government, we will be bringing before you and in the form of probably a budget amendment. And that could be, I believe, we'll have one next week to handle the monies that we've already received.
Did any of that money with overtime qualify, personnel overtime, things like that?
Please, Ms. Jones will address, she's been dealing with the guidelines and requirements, the details.
We are being told that some of the overtime can qualify, so we are pursuing that. I want to expand a little bit on what Mr. Lair said. We submitted initially some numbers on how much we'd spent at that point in time, and provided some estimates, and that was to the city and to the county. And they said, okay, start submitting your actual every month and we'll reimburse you. So it's a little bit different situation, because part of the qualification for the funds is that you didn't already have them in the budget. So you have, on the one hand, you can't have had them in the budget, but now you're spending them and we're going to reimburse you. So state law says you need budget authority to spend. So it couldn't have been there already, but now you have to have a budget amendment in order to be legal. So what we're proposing is that we bring forward to you an amendment for the estimate that we have right now, not just what we're already claiming for reimbursement, but an estimate. So we build some budget authority that will cover us as we spend going forward based on the estimates that we've received from the different departments. So how we would then propose handling that is, this would be close to $500,000 right now. Built in the budget, we don't anticipate all of that being spent or received by the end of June. So the amount that isn't received and spent by June, we would then carry over, as we often do, and it would carry over to the next budget. We'd continue to spend and get reimbursed. And if we find out we get $1 million instead of $500,000 or some whatever that figure is, we would then do another budget amendment later when we know more about how much we are eligible to receive.
Thank you, Linda. Continuing on the theme of finances, I want to remind what I mentioned last week. Our utility billing department will resume all of our payment policy procedures. Remember, we had extended grace through the COVID-19 situation, as did most communities and utility companies. Every community or utility company that I know of is already back online with their original policies. We extended it through June, but starting July 1, we will resume normal late payment fees and our regular guidelines. Moving on, the Rogers County Election Board spearheaded an effort that our own city clerk, Julie Stevens, has taken to heart, and the effort was to provide registered voters the opportunity to have absentee ballots notarized for the June 30 primary and state question election in the form of drive-through notary stations. So this past Saturday, June 6th, and then the upcoming next two Saturdays, 13th and the 20th, there'll be an opportunity for registered voters to have their absentee ballots notarized for the June 30 primary and the state election question. That will take place between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. in the West Owasso City Hall parking lot this past Saturday. They got quite a good response. I want to say as many as 50 or so absentee ballots notarized. So thank you, city staff. Thank you, Julie and Shelley. And I guess I should now mention who else took part. Janet Jackson also helped with that. So another great example of our folks going above and beyond to provide some services on a Saturday. So again, that will happen between 10 and 2 in the Owasso City Hall West parking lot. And there are other locations around Rogers County. This was actually, I think, the idea of Julie Dermody, the Rogers County election official. And I believe Councilor Dunn was aware of that, made some early inquiries. And again, Julie took that on. And it's a service we're proud to be able to provide. Moving on, the 2020 Owasso Economic Summit will be a Zoom webinar. It will be Thursday, June 11th at noon. Again, this will feature economist Dr. Mark Sneed, who will deliver a micro-market economic outlook for Owasso. This is free to attend. You can register by visiting www. I don't think anybody says that anymore, but www.2020owassoeconomicsummit.eventbrite.com. It is free. You could Google, if you don't remember that, you could Google Owasso Economic Summit and sign up for that online. The grand opening of the Redbud Festival Park and the this year's first Gathering on Main will take place Thursday, July 2nd, and in conjunction with that, we will have our grand opening for the Redbud Festival Park and the Red, White, and Boom fireworks display. The city's annual display is being planned for Saturday, July 4th. And I believe that concludes my report.
Thank you, Warren. Finally, Larry. That's been the most delayed thing ever. What are you gonna do? Not any of it your fault. Yeah. All right, item 6 is city council trustee comments. Anyone?
I read the chief's interview in the paper, and just wanted to note that he did a great job of representing our police department and representing our city. He's a great communicator for the city of Owasso. I really appreciate all his comments.
Agreed.
A lot of props to all of our police department for everything they did last Friday with the protests and all. It's everything that's gone on around the country. I think we have positive things to look at for how it was handled. Couldn't have said better. Wendell, that Chief Chambliss really spoke well as to what our mission was for that day, and it was carried out very well.
Yeah, and the fire department, also out there, I guess there were quite a few people who come to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had Public Works that was just it was the city did a great job preparing.
As maybe you know, I actually showed up and met with the organizers and the mother and the young man that started the protest. My reasoning there was, you know, we're in 2020, and in Owasso, if anybody still feels like they're not treated equally, I felt like the leader of Owasso, at least as the mayor, should be there to, you know, to greet them and tell them that we're with them on that. But I also want to be there for our police department. I heard that some of our police were going to be walking. I did see Officer Wells there, and he was walking with the group, and everybody carried themselves so well. It was such a proud day for Owasso. I have to compliment the organizers of the protest. It was very peaceful. They said all the right things. Incredibly positive message, incredibly inclusive message. And again, all of our first responders did such an excellent job of keeping it that way. You know, it's been such a tough thing. You know, you have a few police officers that do some bad things, and all police are under fire for it. Same with these protests. You know, you have to respect people that don't feel like they're treated equal. And I think most of those folks are very peaceful and just want to get that message out. And they've had a few people that have really drug them down. And unfortunately, that's just kind of how our media works. But I thought it was a proud day for Owasso. I thought, I mean, I'm a little biased, but I thought ours was most likely the best one, at least as good as any other. So it's a great day for us, and very proud of everybody involved.
I would second. It was a very moving, to me, very moving moment to see the unity and very, like you said, very proud.
Anyone else? All right, we are adjourned. Everyone have a great evening.